that that the that Parliament is just a bunch of uncontrollable, unbelievable children, and we had an example yesterday where this is evident. Like in Question Time, it's a rabble, and if you want to see how your politicians behave under such circumstances, you should just watch Question Time on occasions and realise that they're just a bunch of children playing in a schoolyard, and that within that construct of the schoolyard sits a number of bullies, and those bullies are intimidating others. They're yelling, they're screaming, they're shouting, and the noise you get from a schoolyard is just incoherent white noise. That's all it is. And within Parliament, we seem to have the same friggin' problem, it appears. So I wanted to play just briefly a question that's being asked by Adam Brandt from the Greens in Parliament yesterday, and it is just interesting to watch how the government respond, because Adam's question is baiting the government. And the government fell for it, hook, line and sinker. And the Prime Minister and Dutton just made absolute bloody, I think the Prime Minister was in there, but Dutton in particular made absolute fools of themselves. And so you just tell me what you think, and paste a comment below, because I'll be interested to know what you think about this. So I'll just show it to you.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Official data released today shows emissions have just gone up by 2% under your government. But the Independent Climate Targets Panel has determined that for Australia to meet the Glasgow Climate Pact requirement to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees, emissions must be cut by at least 74% by 2030. Given Australia will be required to update our targets in Egypt next year, will you take a 75% by 2030 target to the next election? Or is the only way we're going to get science-based climate targets to kick your terrible government out and put the Greens in balance of power?
Now, that was the bait. The question up until there was really quite reasonable. But I thought it was interesting how Brad decided, well, they know that the Liberal Party hate the Greens. I don't think there's all that much love lost between the Labor and the Greens either. But in this particular case, because he knows that they hate the Greens so much, the thought of there being a coalition with the Greens holding the balance of power, is a horrific notion to the Liberal Party.
The Prime Minister has the call. The Prime Minister has the call. Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order.
I thank the Shadow Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, in what hopes to be a Green Labor government, Mr. Speaker, after the next election.
As I said, fell for it, hook, line and sinker. Seriously, what a jerk. And the sense of immaturity that comes out. Normally a person would tend to, if you had any sense at all, you would have just ignored the question and focused on the real question, which was about the climate change targets. But no, they had to go for it because they're kids in that bloody schoolyard.
That's what they hope for. They're calling themselves shadow ministers down there in the Greens, Mr. Speaker. I tell you what, they'll never be in an alignment with this government, Mr. Speaker. There will never be, and there never has been, Mr. Speaker, a Liberal Nationals Green government. But, Mr. Speaker, I do know that the Labor Party did a deal in government with the Greens to bring in the carbon tax. I know they formed an alliance with the Greens, Mr. Speaker, last time they were in the government. I remember the photo. It was almost, Mr. Speaker, as shameful as the photo we saw with the former Leader of the Opposition.
Now, after all this time, there's still no conversation about the actual question. God, I don't know what to say. Seriously, it's an embarrassment if you watch this stuff, which unfortunately I do. Perhaps I like to be embarrassed by our government. However, here it is.
Measuring up the curtains before the last election with all the hubris, Mr. Speaker. So there they are, getting ready already, Mr Speaker, thinking the Greens and Labor are going to walk onto the Treasury.
Just remember, these are the intelligent people with whom we elect to run our government. And, you know, when you think about do people trust politicians, when you see them behaving like this, well, you know, would you trust a 5-year-old in the schoolyard to run a country? Well, guess what's happened?
Benches of this country.
The Leader of the Opposition on a point of order. Order. Order.
I love this bit because here's the opposition baiting them even further, and they're stupid enough to fall into it. Actually, in a way, this is quite clever.
Members on my right, the Leader of the Opposition on a point of order.
On relevance, Mr Speaker. Well, hang on. Sit down.
I'm still hearing.
You sit down, Buffett. You sit down. I've got the
Leader
call.
of the House
I've got the call. Sit down.
Now, it's quite interesting that the Speaker here, even after Albanese called Dutton a buffhead, which is quite appropriate because he is a buffhead, but when Albanese calls him a buffhead, Andrew, whatever his name is, the guy that's the Speaker, didn't put him up on abuse, which I thought was interesting. Like, didn't he hear it or whatever? And these two. So since we've had this new Speaker of the House, the decorum usually was pretty crap, so there was very little. So now there seems to even be less than there was before. So it just amazes me that we allow this to continue, but we will allow this particular section to continue on.
The Leader of the Opposition on point of order of relevance.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. On relevance, the only coalition in this parliament is the rabble over there.
The Leader of the Opposition will resume his seat. The Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, if there was a standing order on glass jaws, he would be in order. Clearly, there is
Leader
not,
of the House.
and he should be sat down.
See, the key to I reckon this is where this has come from, where Keating was great for putting the knife in, and all these guys, I think that they're a Paul Keating, but it just never seems to work.
The Leader of the House will resume his seat.
God, doesn't the Speaker look lost? You know, he just doesn't know what to do. I think he feels, you know, like you're trying to herd a bunch of cats here, buddy. So it's not going to be easy, I can tell you.
Order.
Remember when the teacher used to sit there and say, and just be quiet, waiting for the class to quieten down. That's what this is like, waiting for the class to quieten down, and as a teacher would.
The question asked by the member for Melbourne was extraordinarily broad, and I would ask the Prime Minister to return to the dispatch box.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I note that the Leader of the Opposition takes objection to the suggestion that the Greens and Labor would actually form a coalition. Now, where would I get that idea from, Mr Speaker? They actually did it, Mr Speaker. They actually did it when they were last in government. And I remember many years ago when Lindsay Tanner, the former member for Melbourne, Mr Speaker, the former member for Melbourne said, I think it was before the 2004 election, Mr Speaker, and he said, you know, if it's a close election, we might have to do some of the crazy things the Greens want us to do, Mr Speaker. That's what the former member for Melbourne says, and now a Greens member sits in that former Labor seat, just as a Greens leader would seek to sit in a Labor government, Mr Speaker. So, I can tell the member that under our government, Mr Speaker, emissions have fallen by over 20%, Mr Speaker. Under our government...
So here we are at the end of this, the 3 minutes or whatever they've got for it to respond to a question. They're now decided that they're going to talk about it. So what can I say? They're just crazy, crazy people. But these are the people that we've elected into our parliament. And I reckon if you want to have a fun time, watching Question Time, or if you want a fun time, try watching Question Time, because it kind of is interesting. Because what they do is, if Dorothy Dix will be asked from a member of the government, and so it's a question they know is going to come, and it gives the government opportunity to talk about one of the primary issues that they think, and they always start by saying, "Well, I thank the member for asking that question. I know that you're a psychologist and you do a great deal of work in this area, and you help your community of ABC, and we really appreciate it." And they give the person who's asked the question a real rap, because the poor backbenchers never get a chance to say anything almost in Parliament. It's always left up to the ministers. Of course, Question Time's always about asking the ministers. So the only time that a poor old backbencher has a chance to say anything is in Question Time, and it's the only time the government ever acknowledges them for any of their work whatsoever is during Question Time, when they ask a question. Well, there you have it. The buffoons in Parliament. It is actually both sides, but I do like the way Albanese had a go at Dutton. I think it's a classic, and we ought to score it up as one of those moments in parliamentary history where the Labor Party stuck the boot into the Liberal Party and probably won that battle. And also the Greens, they helped win it as well. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves and be safe.